Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Transportation Commission meeting on September 8th in our new reduced meeting space. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Jennifer, please do a roll call.
Sure. Nick is absent, so James. Here.
Yes, here.
Mark.
Present.
Brett.
Here.
Brooke.
Here.
Raymond.
Here.
And Eric.
Here.
Okay, and we have no council liaisons.
And then now we've done the roll call, I want to introduce James, who's our newest, well, who's not with us at our last meeting, but is one of our new commissioners. James, if you want to just maybe introduce yourself, tell us how long you've been in Davis and what your background is, why you were interested in the commission.
Yes, certainly. I'm James Giller. I have lived in Davis since 2021 when I came here because I'm a graduate student in the Institute of Transportation Studies at UC Davis. I'm doing my PhD, and I was interested in joining the Transportation Commission because I see, things like public transport and also facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists facing like a difficult time right now in the policy space, also in terms of lack of funding, lack of investment, and these things are important to making transportation system safe and functional for everybody. So I wanted to do what I can to contribute to that, at least here in Davis.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, James. Great to have you with us. Look forward to having you on the commission. So with that, I'll ask for approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. So the next is brief announcements from staff, commissioners, and council liaisons. It's the time for brief announcements. We don't have a council liaison this evening. Are there any announcements from commissioners?
I have two.
Yes.
So one announcement is we're reorganizing the Bike to the Movies. We did this in the spring. It's two school sites where we decided to bike a bunch of elementary school kids to the varsity theater to watch a free movie and bike them back. For many of them, it was the first time they biked their downtown, and it worked great. It was supported by Bike Davis, and it was supported by the varsity owner, and the kids loved it, and it went out pretty much without a hitch, so we'll do it again. Trying to get more participation from more school sites, if we can get volunteers to do it. Yeah, I think it was uniformly well received. So as soon as I have the movie lined up and locked in, I'll announce it and I'll extend invitations for people to join and chaperone. It'll be fun. Last time Mayor Veit biked with us, and I certainly will extend an invitation to him as well as the other council members and city staff if they so feel to join us. It was really fun. I'll leave it at that. There's more, I think, brief announcement.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Yes, I actually have some items up here. So this is the last week to apply to be on the general plan committee. So far we've received one application from this commission, and we need to have 2 commissioners on it, maybe 3, I don't know. So if you're interested in applying, I could resend you the email, or you might have it in your inbox to fill out the form to apply to be on the general plan committee. The next thing is in late October, the California Active Transportation Program Symposium is at UC Davis. It costs about $50 or $75 to attend. It's 3 days. It's learning about transportation, focused on active transportation. So if there's an interest, I recommend that you sign up. Ryan, myself, and Corey are going to be there. The next thing is that the City of Davis has a new city manager. His name is Daryl, and he's going to start on September 15th. And we're all looking forward to his start. And then finally, today, actually, 5th Street improvement started. I saw Ryan out there. They were cat tracking, which means putting little dots of where the paint's going to go for the restriping at I, J, and K, and he was working with them on the location of that. And so there's no impact to trash or bust, but maybe some rolling closures, and it should be done in 2 weeks. And this was a project that we brought before you all, and now it's being implemented, so I'm really excited to share that. And that is all my brief announcements.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Who's hosting the Active Transportation Program Symposium?
I believe it's UC Davis, but if you type in and Caltrans, yeah, thank you, Corey. Caltrans and UC Davis.
Great. All right, I'm now opening up the meeting for public comment. At this time, any of the member of the public may address the commission on matters which are not listed on the agenda or are listed on the consent calendar. Speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. You can speak from where you are if that's comfortable, wherever works for you. And if you could just state your name.
My name is Kim Garza, Kim Baldwin Garza actually, but hello, this is my first time here. Kind of nervous, not really great at this, but my reason for being here is I'm a resident at the Tremont Green Apartments on the very end of Cowell, which is a mile away from the nearest public transportation access, which is on Mason Childs or 1 block over Alsamonte. And it makes things very difficult for not only myself, but a lot of other residents, not only in Tremont Green, but the other people and the homeowners also. So there is a lot of interest besides just me. Unfortunately, some of them weren't able to come tonight. You know, kids, work, you know, life kind of stuff. And however, there is the Davis Community Transit that comes out there for disabled people. However, it's only for qualifying disabled people, and it has its limitations. It's a wonderful service. I love it a lot. That's how I got here tonight. Except it kind of limits you. You can't really travel around spontaneously like you can, like on the Unitrend. You know, oh, we're going to go here. Just you have to schedule ahead of time and things like that. That's not the only reason, but it's also more expensive than the Unitrans would be. Sorry about that. So I was hoping that eventually we can get the ball rolling on how to maybe get the funding to make extend a bus stop closer to Tremont Green or in that neighborhood closer. So that's why I'm here tonight. Well, there's a lot of reasons, but yeah, like I guess I'll stop there. That's basically it.
Actually, I've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
I live on Martin. I'm
Okay.
not far from there. And my wife commuted on the bus for many years to downtown Sacramento.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's not close. Where, in the discussions you've had with residents and down there, I mean, where are you envisioning a bus stop would be
Well, this is
convenient?
what I was thinking. Something pretty neutral, like along Cowell. Like maybe even, it doesn't have to be right in front of Tremont Green, but maybe where that park is, you know, the little playground.
Mhm.
On either side of that, and that way it's not right in front of someone's house, and hopefully it won't bother too much.
So is this, I know you mentioned that for people with disabilities, they have access to the Davis Community Transit.
Right, right.
So is this primarily people who are using the bus to go to work and don't have access to get to the bus station?
Yeah,
or
pretty
try to-
much. We, a few months back in June, the Tremont Green, or some of us at Tremont Green, we got together and we actually handed out flyers to a lot of the residents in the neighborhood. Maybe you got one.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was for me, but, and a couple of other people were passing them out. And it was, I had a QR code with a survey on there, like, would this benefit you and your family? Do you know any students it would benefit? And there was actually a lot of positive feedback, and not only from the survey, and that was just within the Tremont Green, like, to give us an idea of, do people really want this, or is it just me, or is it just us, you know? But even when I went around flyering, like, if I catch people at home, I talk to them, and they're like, oh, yeah, there should have been a long time ago, and stuff like that. So I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, but, you know, it's probably gonna take a while to gain some momentum and things like that.
So, I mean, what was the interest from students? Because I know, I mean, obviously that's Unitrans, and they pick up,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
pick up at Schmeiser there.
Right, Schmeiser is, Schmeiser would be great if it would serve like all day long, like regular other Unitrans routes. But, it only comes in the morning once and once in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's just a school route.
Yeah. So it kind of doesn't serve, other people who aren't, school age people.
Okay.
So, because Unitrans is in fact, public, it's for everybody.
So did people prioritize what their main interest in having their access to the bus was for?
Well, pretty much for work, and they did, a lot of them did say it would be easier for the kids, you know, so they don't have to, only be limited to the Schmeiser, or, you know, in case the kids had to go somewhere, you know, go on that busy street on Mason Childs right there, and, there's been talk of that. Yeah, just things like that, and also because Tremont is in fact a low-income apartment complex, it would be nice to have closer access to public transportation. Not everybody can afford an Uber all the time, you know. I can't afford to pay $30 to go down the street, you know.
Sure.
So, but it would just be really nice to kind of move around spontaneously when you need to. Like in case you're in a jam, I can't call the transit to come that day. And if it's not important enough to call 911 for an ambulance, you know, I can hop on the bus and go to urgent care or something, stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the problems we've got in South Davis, obviously, is the YOLO bus service was curtailed pretty heavily, so
Okay.
we just have, I think, the 42, there's a couple routes now. Yeah, there's not as many routes or as times as there used to be in South Davis, so that's also kind of exacerbates the problem a little bit too
Okay.
there, so. All right, well, thank you so much, I really appreciate it.
Can I ask
Yeah.
a clarifying question?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
know this is an agendized item, so we can't discuss it amongst
Right.
ourselves, but I just have a question for the
Absolutely, please.
commenter.
Yeah.
So, would you say that the majority of destinations that the neighbors who have expressed interest would be in Davis?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you.
Yes, grocery shopping, just, you know, anything, interpersonal reasons,
Okay.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Like commuting, like a lot of the residents in my apartments, they work in, one of them works in Stockton, and she said it would be really nice if there was a bus stop closer than, so she could take the bus, you know. I mean, I know Unitrans doesn't go to Stockton, but maybe she knows how to, yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you did a
Appreciate
great job.
Yeah. We just wanted to get a little bit better picture of what.
Yeah, well, thanks
what
for
the interest
listening, and
was,
thanks for your guys' questions. I appreciate that.
Thank
so
you.
much. And hang out as long as you would like.
Yeah, I'm getting picked up at 7, so.
Is there any other public comment this evening? Okay, if there's no public comment, we will move on, to.
Oh, one more thing.
Oh, sorry, yes.
I might think of more things to say next time I come
Oh, perfect.
That'd be
So
great.
I'm probably forgetting a bunch
Yeah.
of good stuff, but.
No
okay,
problem.
okay.
We'll see
Thank
you
you.
later.
Okay, the next item is our consent calendar. The items on the consent calendar are non-controversial, can be approved with one motion. I think the only thing on our consent calendar this evening is the commission meeting minutes from our last meeting. If you were not in attendance at that meeting, you can't vote on this item. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move it.
And
It's
I'll
been
second.
moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our regular items. For these, we'll receive a presentation, and commissioners will have a chance to ask any clarifying questions about the presentation and staff report. Please hold all comments and discussion until after we hear the public comment. Commissioners must be open to new ideas and listen to the public comment. After that, we can then discuss the item and provide our own comments. So, Jennifer, you wanna
Yeah, let's do
take
it.
the first item?
Alright, so I'll be taking the next two items. The first one is other power-driven mobility device policy, which is a tongue twister. And this policy is coming from a community request where community members are wanting to ride mobility devices on our pathways. And right now, the city of Davis does not have a policy that defines what is a allowed mobility device. So all mobility devices are currently allowed on our pathways. So the purpose of this policy is to define how we want to define a mobility device, and this policy will only affect people who have a mobility disability. And so as part of it, I'm going to define what an other power-driven mobility device is, what factors can be modified as part of the policy, and then get your feedback on those factors. So we've received community requests that folks want to ride these electric mobility scooters. They're fully enclosed, they weigh up to 600 pounds. They are about 43 inches long or wide. They go 18 miles an hour. This is one example. You had another example in your staff report as well. And right now, our community is allowed to buy these and use them on our pathways and bikeways. And how they can do it is by just verbally saying that I have an ADA mobility disability, or they have a placard that says that they have a mobility disability and therefore they are permitted to ride this device. So what is the definition of an other power-driven mobility device? It is any golf cart, any Segway, any all-terrain vehicle. They are all encapsulated in this, defined by the ADA as other power-driven mobility devices. And a person who has a mobility disability is allowed to choose whatever mobility device they would like. Oh, sorry. Alright, so what is not an other power-driven mobility device? So if you do not have a mobility disability, you are not allowed to ride a golf cart on our pathways, because it is not within the other power-driven mobility devices. If you have a wheelchair, you're allowed to go anywhere. Walker, crutches, canes, braces, permitted everywhere that pedestrians can go, allowed everywhere. And this policy does not apply to any class 1, 2, or 3 electric bikes. So it's the city's responsibility to make reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. And in order to do that, we need to create a policy that defines what our expectations are for folks who want to ride devices on our pathways. And then it's also our responsibility to advertise and market that and let people know what our rules are, so before they purchase a device, they have an understanding of what is allowed and what is not allowed. So what are we allowed to provide our content on? We can talk about type, size, weight, dimension, speed of the devices. When we're thinking about devices, these are some of the factors that the ADA wanted us to think about. The facility volumes, how many pedestrians are in an area. This comes into play with like big events like fairs and farmers markets, and how would a giant mobility device interact with people if there's high pedestrian volumes. Another thing is facility design. Is the pathway really narrow and it's not going to allow for certain devices to move through an area, or even buildings? Is it appropriate to have certain devices in buildings? And that's where that comes from. And then the city needs to have legitimate reasons for implementing this. It just can't be that we're making assumptions or just like thinking, oh, well, we need this. We have to have legitimate safety reasons for having a policy. And then also we have to understand whether the devices are going to create a substantial risk or serious harm. So this is what we're proposing. I also gave you several examples from other cities and parks organizations of their policies. Our policy is very similar to theirs. First of all, we do not want, or we're recommending no fully enclosed devices. So nothing like what we saw at the beginning of the presentation that looks like a mini car on the pathways. The next is no gas-powered devices. We want everything to be zero emissions. We also were thinking that the size should be no wider than 36 inches wide. And then the gross weight, which means that it's the weight of the device and the person, shall not exceed 550 pounds. That device I showed you for the net weight, just the device weight was 575 pounds, and the max weight was 660 pounds. We're recommending a max operating speed of 10 miles an hour on sidewalks and 20 miles an hour on shared use paths. One thing I did not mention, this does not impact bike lanes. This only impacts sidewalks and pathways. That's where we're going to be enforcing this policy, not on our bike lanes. And the reason why we selected 20 miles an hour for the pathway speed is because that is the speed of the e-bikes. And in our next item, there's a statement about how right now we don't have a speed limit on our pathways. It's all about being safe and prudent, and this will allow for those e-devices, e-bikes, and mobility devices to operate around that same speed. And that's it.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So are there any clarifying questions from commissioners this time? I guess the only clarifying question I have is on the gross weight number.
Yeah.
Does that still allow for an adequate range of devices for people to use?
Excellent question, Brooke. So I was looking at, hold on. So this device here, which is open air, it's more similar to a golf cart, that weighs about like 300 pounds. So that would allow, a device like this would be allowed to operate on our pathways.
So a clarifying question, this is a single person device, right?
This one,
It looks.
yeah, I think it's a single
Yeah.
person, yeah.
Because a conventional golf cart, they're all like 48 inches wide, they would all not be allowable by anyone under this policy.
Well, they would not be allowed by anyone, including mobility devices, and they're currently not permitted by people who do not have a mobility disability. Yes.
Any other clarifying questions? Yes, James.
So, you explained about the choice of the 20 mile per hour limit on shared use paths, but what about the 10 miles per hour on footpaths? What was the reason behind that?
Sidewalks?
Sidewalks?
Yes, sidewalks.
I'm looking at Ryan because he was the one who came up with that one.
So, these are like the max speeds that these devices go up before the governor or whatever stops them. Not the speed that we really think they should be traveling at. We think they should be traveling at a lower speed. And really the 20 and the 10, well the 20 lines up with the class 2 device, it kind of exists already. Not really anything that exists for sidewalks, so we kind of made a decision, and that was based on judgment, that we wanted a device speed that was lower than the 20, And that gave us a range of options for devices that could be allowed to be on sidewalks without restricting them. A lot of them max speed 7, 8 miles an hour. And that's really where it came from. I don't have, like, with a 20, I don't have something that I can just point at and say, this is why. Could not find it in any of the research.
All we wanted to discuss for the speed limits in the discussion period, so.
And so,
Continue.
as a part of the discussion, the factors that are on the screen, are the ones that you guys can give us your input on. And the ADA allows us to modify these factors as a part of our policy.
Are there any other clarifying questions at this time? Okay, if there's no more clarifying questions, and we'll open up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Yes.
Hi, I'm Trish Price with Bike Davis. Nice to meet you, new commissioners. So our paths are 5 feet, right?
10.
10? Oh, okay. So I don't know, I just think that 36 inches is, I mean, I'm kind of picturing a couple of parents wheeling their strollers and a 550-pound vehicle charging up at them at 20 miles an hour or coming up behind them. These things seem a lot more dangerous to, they're perceived as more threatening, I think, than an e-bike and certainly than an e-scooter. So I just think that these, I don't know that they're necessary. I don't want to exclude people from our paths, but I don't think that excluding these vehicles necessarily excludes the people. There are other devices.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gary Sandler, and I have a family member who does not live in Davis. It doesn't apply to her, but I have a little bit of experience. They are over 300 pounds themselves and have knee issues and can't walk and all that sort of stuff. And a mobility device would make a huge difference to her should she be living here. And so if I project from that, the 550-pound vehicle weight gross limit may be a little shy for many people with mobility issues who also have weight issues as a consequence, right? Kind of a comorbidity, if you will. So it's something to think about how you set that gross weight limit. And I appreciate your comment about using prudence and thoughtfulness on a bike path. I ride bike paths on my bike all the time, and I see people just be unaware of their surroundings, and the dog is over here, and the child is over there, and with the leash and all of that, it's all blocking the bike path. And then someone comes barreling through, and so something to maybe do a little promotion around. But I just think maybe 550, if the net vehicle weight of a vehicle like the one with the little awning is already 250 or 300, you might not be able to get a gross weight within 550 for a certain population. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. In fact, originally we did not plan to have weight as one of our criteria or factors, and that's something that's on the table tonight too, is that we could eliminate weight and just look at size, if that makes more sense for our commission.
All right, any other public comment? All right, with that, I will open up for discussion from commissioners. Is there any feedback? Brett?
I'm happy to wait for the.
And I would ask commissioners to speak up, just so that we can hear everyone. Thank you.
Sure.
Brett, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think the way to handle the public commenters' question about gross weight is to do a net weight. I think weight is important for the vehicle, but we don't want to get into this situation where somebody is like a little heavier, and then that just seems to create a bad dynamic. So the vehicle weight, I think, is an important one. And this will come up in the next item, and I have the same issue. I believe 10 miles an hour is too fast on the sidewalks. If any of you have been on the sidewalks, I was just downtown and somebody flew by me on a scooter and they were going 10 miles an hour. I think a reasonable expectation for people with mobility challenges is to be able to go a comfortable walking pace. Not slower, but not necessarily faster. So I think 5 miles an hour on sidewalks will be quite reasonable, because as we walk, we're not going 5 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour is way faster. That's kind of a casual bike speed.
That's
And
a fast run, 10 miles an hour.
And so these vehicles are wide, and you know, I don't want to get run over. I get run over walking my dogs almost every other day, you know, by somebody choosing the sidewalk and not choosing the bike lane. I think 20 miles an hour is too fast on the shared use path. I think 15 miles an hour would be good, and I'll be bringing this up for the next item, so it's not to single out people with these mobility devices. My recollection is UC Davis used to have a 15 mile an hour speed on the shared use paths. I mean, obviously in the next item we talk about no faster than it's safe to do so. Well, we have that rule for cars on the streets, but we also have speed limits. And I know that enforcement can be a challenge around this, but it gives, if let's just say a police officer does choose to come and monitor a shared use path, it gives them a little bit more objective, like, oh, I was on my police e-bike following you and you were going, you know, 20, as opposed to somebody arguing, well, it's the middle of the day, I'm on the shared use path, there weren't many people around, so 20 is truly safe. So, slightly long-winded, but I'll be bringing the same request up for the next line, which is 5 on the sidewalk, 15 on the shared use path. But other than that, I don't know, I mean, requiring some level of placard or some sort of proof of necessity, but we can extrapolate and know that pretty soon, there'll be more of these things, food delivery folks delivering us 6 different things at once or something.
Thanks. Other commissioner comment?
I just had more of a question for Jennifer on the credible assurance category. But what's the main enforcement mechanism here? I mean,
I'm sorry, Ruben, I can't hear you. Go ahead.
so compared to agenda item 6B,
Yeah.
what would be the enforcement mechanism for this OPDMD policy?
Sure.
Because there is a municipal code section that's being proposed for 6B, but for 6A, I mean, is Davis PD just going to file this policy? I mean, I just wonder what.
I'm looking at Ryan, so we're going to adopt the policy, and then the factors from the policy are going to go into an ordinance, and then that ordinance will then be enforced.
Specifically for this item, there are some struggles on the enforcement side. Essentially, if somebody says this is a device, sorry, we're going to accept that face value. There's no follow-up, there's no investigation, it's what it is. The policy is really designed more to set limits and create an expectation, so if somebody's looking to purchase something, they kind of know where it would be allowed and wouldn't be allowed. The ordinance will provide the means to enforce it with it. And although there is some language in this policy that would allow us to kind of do the code enforcement type action. Going briefly back to the speed limit issue, when I crafted a lot of this language, it was crafted around the maximum operating speed that these devices have, mainly to give us something to actually sign them off, so we had something actionable. What we're seeing in other communities are a lot of devices that are maximum speed 30-ish miles an hour, and it's very hard for PD or somebody to kind of figure out what speed that bike is traveling at, but if we know what its maximum operating speed is, so it's no longer a type 1 or 2 device, then that's something that they can take action on. So when we get to that point, I'd really recommend keeping those maximum design speeds for the device in there, but establishing a speed limit as a separate criteria as well.
Thank you.
Just one quick item, the last sentence of the credible assurance section, it mentions, smart facilities and trainings. I don't think that was intentional.
Oh, no, it completely was not intentional, sorry, that was
Okay,
us borrowing something, missing a line.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, so in the Netherlands, when I still had grandparents, they were famously, like many people in the Netherlands, when they aged, able to use the active mobility network to get around. So very much in favor of accommodating and accounting for people who need these devices. The one difference is the types of devices we're talking about here is not the types of device you would typically see on active mobility networks there, kind of go into both the weight and the size issue. I am happy to see a width constraint. I think a width on the narrow bike paths has already been, like it's going to create conflict. We're going to be talking about the width, maybe a planning component going forward, because we're going to have to plan for the traffic of the future, and you should have done that years ago, and here we are. But width is important. I think having them not fully enclosed, I think is helpful. The electric only, thank you. If you're ever on campus, offering the old 4-wheel drive campus vehicles that are still hung around, it's terrible to be stuck behind. And one thing to keep in mind, and the traffic volumes are not nearly as high on the bike paths outside of most places on campus, but if you're on the campus at rush hour, and there is a 4-wheel jam, which they allow, you get these what they do is they clog the whole thing. And I don't anticipate that we have many of these devices on the daily bike paths, but they can, at some pedestrian and bike volume, they can start to clog up the roads because bicyclists can't pass them. They don't let themselves go fast enough. And that creates flow issues, which are mitigated by just not having 48-inch wide devices. And then on the speed, look, I don't know how the enforcement is going to work for any of this. My worry is that we're going to be seeing what I see on campus, that is campus police SUVs on the bike paths, policing a crowd of mostly pedestrians and cyclists. And I sincerely hope that we're not going to see that. There's going to be an enforcement discussion more on the next issue than this one, but keeping the enforcement simple and I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with that. 20 miles an hour is a maximum, and is what's coming down from whatever the regulations are, at least they're monitored. It should be for any participant in traffic, a car as well as a cyclist, to adjust their speed as is safe. When we are talking about when people are on sidewalks, the question always comes up is why are they on the sidewalks? There's always a good reason why they're on the sidewalks. Sometimes they're on the sidewalks because, and I'm imagining, I see a group of kids going to the school just outside city limits. They go on the sidewalks because their parents have taught them to not be on the bike lane because the sidewalk is the safety place for them. So I want to be a little careful. I see lots of people doing stuff on the sidewalks that is not helpful. But not everybody who uses the sidewalk is using it because they just don't think. Some of them are doing it out of self-preservation. So there is a design component to this as well that I think we should really, it's our job here to keep that in mind as well. It means that we haven't designed a good place for it. The net weight seems to be the issue, the easiest to enforce issue. I think Brad did make that, you made that comment. I think that I fully echo that. And maybe, how many of these devices are there? I imagine there's like a limited number of models and makes.
I googled it, it seems like there's more and more coming out. I would say that there were like maybe 20 different models of them.
It may be advisable to actually go through that list and say, hey, here's the list of things that we allow, and maybe err on the side of manageable in size and weight, as opposed to waiting until people come through and say, is this okay? that seems to be just to kind of keep control. A suggestion.
I'll take a look at it, I'm not sure if we can legally regulate, make them one, and there's,
No, you can regulate this, but you can basically just make this match the list of next model that will be allowable under the rules that we got.
yeah, and the other thing I found is, while there's a limited number of manufacturers in the United States, there's a number of importers that are bringing in devices from elsewhere that might or might not meet normal state or federal requirements, but since it's part of the import, it's very hard to track or manage it.
Anyway, I was just gonna say, I really agree with the net weight, using that. I think it's really difficult for people to, try and determine what their gross weight's gonna be, and I agree with your comment that a lot of times people need these because they have mobility issues related to weight, so, yeah, I think that just makes it a lot easier for us to enforce that. And if we can do something down the road, or if there's something on as far as the sidewalk speed, I agree with Brett. I mean, it shouldn't be 4 times the normal walking speed is what we're hoping to keep people on the sidewalks. Anyway, Eric?
I just, thank you. I was wondering more on the design side. Maybe Ryan can answer this, but I mean, you get weight on a bike path built for bikes, like 500-pound vehicles or more. That could be, I mean, are we designed to be able to, I mean, is that gonna create, like gravel? Is it gonna bust up our pathways? I mean, they're not made for that. That's why you can't drive on the shoulder of highways, is because highways are built for cars on the road, but not the shoulder is very much thinner asphalt. And I don't know if our bike pathways are built for vehicles for 500 pounds or not.
Most of our trails, our bike paths are designed to allow maintenance vehicles on a couple dozen times a year, like F-150 or something along those lines. I don't envision, based on the number of devices we expect, that this is going to have a meaningful impact on the design life of the trails.
I appreciate that. I think that we can't envision what this is going to look like in 10 years, because 10 years ago we didn't envision, scooters everywhere. 15 years ago we didn't envision, I mean, like it's easy to say, oh, well, we'll probably not have many, but we could have a lot. And I think that we should try, as I think Mark pointed out, get ahead of this instead of get behind it. Second, because that maintenance is expensive, and I don't know, maybe we require registration of these vehicles and a license fee at the city level, and that funding goes into maintaining these roads or these paths or something. I don't know. I think it's something to think more broadly about. I guarantee that lots of people are going to want one of these. Like, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you get around Davis in one of these that has air conditioning, like, or at least fans blowing on you, and all you have to do is limp when you get off it, because you can't ask them if they're actually mobility impaired. Why wouldn't more people do this? Also, our community is getting older, and there will be more and more people who will have mobility issues. And then second, I was wondering if we, one relatively simple way to reduce the width issue or address the width issue is that, like, those bollards, and make them only 35 inches apart in every pathway as we go in. I mean, you can bike through 35 inches pretty easily at a reasonable pace. If you're going 25 miles an hour, well, maybe you shouldn't be. And then these vehicles just can't get into those pathways if they're broader than that. It becomes a little bit easier maybe to enforce and manage. Just a thought. I mean, I know that's not part of the policy. This is, again, more about how do we design the system to be ready for this world that we're, quickly moving into.
Actually, I have a question, Mark, for you, kind of following up on that. What's the width of a cargo bike? And I was also thinking, like, Burleys and things like that can be up to 36 inches.
Yeah, we definitely do not want to exclude trikes from this. I have an inline two-wheel cargo bike, and actually it's outside Google measure, but I don't think that particular one is more than 24 inches, but I also caution us against just not, we need all kinds of like class 1 gear-assisted bikes that we can get. I think we want to just embrace them and manage any issues with them.
I want to see one of those things.
Oh, well,
Oh, I'm customization actually. I'm interested.
Yeah.
so,
Is that okay?
oh,
You can have a seat. No, I want to see your face.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious if
I
there
think we should, no, I mean.
but
we
I
should
wanna
not.
be clear that the policy does not apply to class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes.
I guess I was
It's getting back to
when
the
we're
baller.
restricting
The baller
access, that may be an issue for other things. Yes, James.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, if you, again, just clarify the point about the speeds, like 20 on the shared use paths and 10 on the sidewalks in relation to the maximum operating speed. Can you restate that link there again?
Okay, so, asking me about speed is always dangerous. I've got like 15 definitions for speed, so I apologize. I got two things here. The speed that's safe to operate at, 5 miles an hour on the sidewalk, I agree, is probably the most reasonable operating speed to operate on the sidewalk. And 10, 15 miles an hour on the trails. That's the speed that people are driving at and they're working at. What I was trying to do was establish a maximum speed the device would go before a governor would kick in and turn off the electric assist. The idea being, fine, I've got somebody that's pushing the limits past 5, at least the device at some point will stop you from becoming very excessive. For the trails, it was pretty easy. Class 2 e-bikes are per California legal on the trails. We, the city, can't do anything about it. They have a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour. So I just, analog, everything's consistent, that makes sense. Trying to come up with something for the sidewalks was a little bit more difficult. And I had to exercise some judgment on that. We really wanted to be operating about 5 miles an hour. I want the devices that are probably gonna go 7 to 8 miles an hour to be available. So I kind of capped it at 10, split the difference.
So when you mentioned having like a speed governor, is that something that it would be like, would it be required to be installed on these devices for them to be used here? Is that what you were talking about?
They either have a maximum operating speed, or they have a governor in order to meet the class 1, 2, 3 e-bikes. Even the Segway or something like that caps out at these speeds. I'm assuming you started with the Q.
Yep. The Q Express, it has a max speed of 18 miles an hour.
Yeah. So they all have some sort of max speed that's kind of built into the device. Each one's a little bit different, especially for the ones that, like the Q Express is coming in from overseas. But that's what I was really looking at, is something that there's a performance schedule for the device. We can look at it, law enforcement can look at it and say, this exceeds that 20, or this doesn't exceed that 20, so we can work from there.
So that would be at the point where somebody comes to say, can I use this device on the paths in Davis? And then you can point to the specification being no, yes or no.
Exactly.
And then that would be separate from the speed that we would want them to actually operate while on the paths?
It would be separate from the speed we want them to operate at that service. That speed would be lower than whatever the maximum speed of the device
Would
is.
that be part of the ordinance as well? The desired operating speed?
It will be part of the ordinance, and we'll talk about that in the next item. When we get to it, we're gonna talk about what is enforceable by PB, how would they have to go about enforcing it? And it becomes a little less clear, unfortunately.
So, okay, thank you for clarifying. So I think it's important to ground this discussion in like what the purpose of this policy is. And that it's like quite different from any policy related to other kinds of micromobility devices, in that the kind of people that we're talking about in this case, this policy is supposed to serve are people with disabilities that prevent them from traveling where everybody else who doesn't have an ability to travel can. And these people should have the ability to go where everyone else can. They should be able to go on the sidewalks because that's where you enter stores and things like that. They should be able to go on the shared use paths. And while it is prudent to consider the safety concerns of having larger devices traveling at this speed or that speed, at the same time, I want to avoid thinking about these users as being people who are likely to want to take advantage of the system to cause other people trouble, and give them a lot of the kind of benefit of the doubt on that.
May I ask a question?
Not right at the moment.
I'm asking about this, this requirement for the golf cart because I'm interested to buy one and I'm driving around the city. What's the requirement?
Yeah, and that's basically what we're discussing. Unfortunately, we've already passed public comment and we're into commissioner discussion.
Oh.
So, but I think you'll kind of understand where this is going from the commissioner discussion here.
So, if I could respectfully disagree. So, I think it's important for all users, whether you have a mobility issue or not a mobility issue, to be constrained by what would be generally considered safe. 10 miles an hour with these types of things is not safe. 5 miles an hour is above walking speed, and it's not to either single out people with mobility issues or not mobility issues. I think there should be a uniform policy, which is if I'm walking, we have elderly folks that if they get hit, they fall down and break their hip. So my grandmother died, right? It's important for the sidewalks to be a safe space, and 10 miles an hour is just too fast.
So
if I could finish.
Yeah.
The notion that we are pegging the speed to the object's maximum speed is undercut by the next item where we see the class 3 e-bikes go 28. So on one hand we're saying, oh, we choose 20 for the shared use path because we can't really enforce anything, so we'll go by the vehicle speed. Imagine we did that for cars. Covell, Cal, I can go double the speed limit with no problem.
No, we should go there and do that, but we don't.
And so the enforcement aspect is important. It's a real issue, but much of the enforcement will come from the peers on the path. So if you go across from the high school, kind of towards North Davis, heading that direction, we've had, I'm trying to blink on his name, Earl, talk about creating a separate little bike loop. It is very crowded. It's like a little slalom course with the dog walkers, little kids and strollers. 20 is just too fast.
Of course it is.
Right? And so, you know, the public being able to go, hey, it's 15, slow down. That's where the enforcement is going to come from. It's going to come from the community members kind of, you know, going, hey, slow down, man, you're going too fast. But if it's 20, there are many circumstances where 20 is just too fast. And I know there's the general idea of don't go any faster than it is safe to do so. But leaving it to the judgment of people, that hasn't worked so well with just look outside, right? So I appreciate Ryan's concern about enforceability, but relying on the item's mechanical speed limit, I think, you know, we talk about technology, there could be technology solutions that don't require a police and an SUV driving down the bike path to, you know, get people to go a more safe speed. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I actually totally agree with what you were saying, and what I was trying to say wasn't to go against setting these lower speeds. I think that's totally right.
I misunderstood, sorry.
It was just, I wanted to make sure that, you know, in thinking about setting these speeds, and other, like, parameters of what devices you're going to allow, it should be about, like, reasonable considerations of safety, considering that people who are going to be using these are, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt they're going to be using them responsibly. And that means that we can set safety parameters without being like overly cautious, thinking that, oh, what if, you know, they decide that it's convenient to get around, so they're just going to go at the highest speed that they can, right? Because people just want to, you know, live their life. They're not trying to, you know, cause trouble from any other people most of the time. So that was all I was saying. But yeah, I totally think that the speed limit should be set. The like desired operating speed should be, you know, much lower than what is written in the policies is 20 and 10. And also in general, what determines how the speed at which people travel on like roads and on paths is usually the like design of the path itself, and also the kind of device that the person is using, the size of it relative to the path. It's these. So I can imagine that if you have a shared use path that's, you know, nicely paved, quite wide, really straight, people are going to feel like they want to go much faster on that than on a, you know, narrower sidewalk that has some bumps in it and things. You know, that's also going to strongly determine how comfortable people with disabilities are with traveling at different speeds. So yeah, I agree that there's going to be a lot of things that determine the operating speed besides just the letter of the law. It's going to be
We're not without putting a max operating speed and then speed limits as well. Right, Ryan?
For this policy, I think we can establish a max operating speed, and then speed limits, I'm sorry. When we talk about the ordinance, it becomes a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
So these things are not going to be geofenced. The only devices that I know in our communities that are geofenced are the actual rental scooters, which can be dynamically regulated, which, you know, I wish we would govern all vehicles, because we are talking a lot, rightfully so, about the risks that these and also the e-bike devices monitor. Those risks amplify when you fall over on the regular road, and we're much more hamstrung than able to do anything about those. But I wish you would be more, you know, would be more restricting, because those are, I mean, a large group of drivers that have shown time and again to not be able to make the judgment that they need to make. And everything with mass and speed escalates very quickly. Like there are clearly risks involved with the groups of users that we use here, and we're not even able to touch the users where we know the most injuries and fatalities happen even in our communities. These devices are not going to come in with the ability for us to set 2 speeds, so I think we're going to be stuck with 20 miles an hour as the de facto operating speed. And sure, we should or could say this is the safe speed that these devices should be run in a pedestrian sidewalk environment. I'm fine with 5 miles an hour. It's just not going to be enforced. It should, like in an ideal world, it need to be enforced, and maybe it never will have to be enforced. But we don't even enforce drivers in cars effectively at all. So for all these policies, I mean, there is not going to be, it is like you were saying, it is, you know, the community enforcement. People expecting each other to behave. Like this morning on Putwin, I was doing 8 miles an hour and I was waiting to let other people go past. And that's what you do on these. If it's busy on these, in these environments, you're supposed to. And not everybody does, but most people do. And if enough people use them, hopefully that establishes kind of a community norm that holds people to account there. I just do not know what mechanism we have to enforce this ordinance. I guess the question, Ryan, is if we adopt something today that doesn't work 2 years from now, you can bring this back up and take it.
Yeah, and anything that's a policy approved by council resolution, very easy to do. Anything in the ordinance, a little more complicated, but still very doable. And that's, looking into my crystal ball, I expect there's going to be additional restrictions on e-bikes passed by the state assembly in the next 3 to 4 years. There's a lot of discussion about them. There's a lot of discussion about them on trails. A lot of cities have gotten special, our communities have gotten special permission from the state assembly to experiment, especially with restricting younger users, essentially requiring a driver's license requirement or equivalent to use it. And I'm trying to set this up in such a way that we have the ability to accommodate those changes as they start to evolve without having to touch it a lot, but we can always go back and touch it. Right.
Jennifer, can you go back to the slide that had the proposals? I feel like we're close enough that I'm
Yes.
happy to make a motion and accept friendly amendments. I would make the motion that we follow the staff recommendation, except for that on the weight, we have a net weight.
I think it's another slide,
Yeah, so
Oh,
it's,
you want this one?
the one that we're proposing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So net weight shall not exceed, let's just, for discussion purposes, I'll say 350. And sidewalk 5 miles per hour and shared use 15 miles an hour.
Okay.
And obviously this is a recommendation to council, but I'm not so worried about the enforceability. I think it's important to set the general expectation that 5 miles an hour is the speed we go on the sidewalk. Just like many of us, it's going to be dark. If you rode your bike, you probably have a light. Whereas if you stand at the corner, especially when campus goes back into session, there are more people without lights than with lights. And that's not really enforced, as somebody knows, pet peeve of mine. But the reality is, we set the expectation that you're supposed to have a light. And we'll figure out enforcement at some point in the future. But the notion that we can go 10 miles an hour and in compliance as we're running over people, I'd rather have what's right, send the signal to the community, and then we can figure out how we enforce, or in the next item, that whole education piece, which is a very big component of the next item. So that would be my motion. Motion is net weight 350 pounds, sidewalk 5 miles per hour, shared use 15.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
James seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I had a
Yes.
discussion on the motion. I don't understand the safety impacts of the shall not be fully enclosed.
For me,
It has to be a safety requirement, right? Because that's what it says. We can only,
so I
past
think
things
it's
are
about, I was thinking about this a lot. It's a lot about eye contact and communication. When you're in a fully enclosed, you can't really do your hand signals. You can't make that eye contact. The person in front of you or coming towards you might not know when you're gonna turn. So I think that being out of a fully enclosed allows for that. And also, when you're fully enclosed, it looks like a car, and it just has this presence that is different than a golf cart that is not fully enclosed. And there's a different feeling, passing someone in that and making sure that they're visible
I would also say that, requiring it to not be fully enclosed could help limit or mitigate any future, like, form factor designs of these devices that are more dangerous when they make a collision with somebody.
I am wholly for having them not allowing them to be fully enclosed. I think we have to discuss that, I mean, when you write it up in the policy,
Yeah.
because otherwise, I mean, I think all the points you just made are good, but I think we have to write them down, because if I were a person with a disability and then I was told I can't have it fully enclosed, and you can say why, it doesn't say anything in the policy why I can't have a fully enclosed car or vehicle. I think that we need to be careful about that.
One of the things I thought of in terms of enclosure is just the auditory,
Yes.
just the
Listening
communication
as well.
like, hey, on your left.
Yeah,
If you're in your little thing with the stereo blaring in your little bubble,
That's a good point.
It's the auditory as well as the visibility.
Yes.
You think of whatever I think they call the A bars that basically limit your visibility within a car, and then this would be analogous to that. I mean, your point is well taken. I think we ought to be precise and be beholden to what we can regulate, and I think this is how we regulate it.
So the,
Do we need to add that to the motion? Or
No, but you need to have it in policy.
Brian, can you just take that as, take a stand?
So in the California State Park policy, they actually had the, policy requirement and then their justification, and we can do a very similar thing as a
Yeah.
part of our policy.
Just think it helps cover us, the city, a little better.
It will also further reinforce the correlation between the requirement and the safety benefit. When we write the resolution, the council will consider when they approve this.
Ryan, I have a question. Would you consider making this a limited process? Or at least an approval process? Not so much to recoup some funds, but to start to have some control as this rolls out. I recognize that what I asked might create work, and I'm not trying to do that. But
So I've jotted down a note here that I need to look at what the process or legality would be for licensing these devices. I don't think there is. There might be ability to do it as a bike licensing thing, which would be a stretch, and I need to talk to the attorneys. I'm getting a nod over there that I'm probably not able to do that, but I will be following up on it, and if there's anything that I can take action on, I'll bring it back to the commission.
yeah, I mean, it may be moot point, or it may really take off, and I think it would be helpful for us to kind of have, for us, the city, to have a sense as to, you know, is this gonna be one of the devices, which it might be, or is it gonna be 30, 40, and then we're looking at, then we're looking at a different scenario.
So how it works with licensing and these kinds of devices is that if the government doesn't already license these devices, then we can't just license them for mobility disability people. And so we have to be really careful about that. Like the golf cart right now, no license required, you can be 13, minimum age to drive a golf cart. Now you can't ride it on our pathways unless you have a mobility disability, but that's what the California state law says. The Segway and the all-terrain vehicle might require some sort of license depending on that vehicle, but we cannot impose that unless it's something that is imposed for everyone.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things. You're talking about licensing the operation of, and I'm talking about permitting them their operation on our facilities, which I think is a different thing, and I think that we can do. But
And that's what I'm gonna follow up on, to see if I can charge something to permit them or allow them or register them
I mean,
at the
yeah,
municipal level.
yeah, I think that you can, based on your policy. Like we can, because you could say, we're only permitting ones that are 36 inches or smaller, and you have to come to us to get a permit to prove that you are 36 inches or smaller. I mean, that's,
And then, like I said, I wanna talk to legal, ADA requirements are also, this is, from a bureaucratic standpoint, this is very different because it is outside of the California Vehicle Code that these devices operate on the street, but they're by and large exempt from the normal rules and regulations. I look at this thing and the California Vehicle Code says it's a golf cart. And to me, that means the city can license, authorize its operation on roads with posted speed limits less than 35 miles an hour in certain conditions. But it's not gonna be used as a golf cart, it's a mobility device, and none of that works.
Right, you can't operate a golf cart on a road in California. I mean, unless you get special permission statutorily, but you can operate this, that's what you're saying. Because we can't say no, because they might be mobility disabled people, right?
And the things that I would expect from a vehicle on the road, don't apply. It doesn't have a VIN.
Right.
It's not registered with the DMV.
Right.
There's no real operating license requirement associated with it.
Okay, if we could vote on the motion
Let's do it.
then, please. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Great, thank you very much. That was some great discussion. Hopefully sets the stage for our next item. It is Jennifer.
It is. Alright, I'm gonna try to. Okay. So this next item is looking at actions and for mitigating safety concerns of e-devices and proposing changes to Chapter 6 of the general plan. So the purpose of this discussion is that we want to discuss with you some e-device actions that we met with our Davis Police Department about, figure out if they work, if we need to do more, and how we can improve upon those actions, what's working, what's not working, to get your feedback, and then also with the Davis Municipal Code changes that we want to make. So that is the purpose of this discussion today. Alright, so why am I bringing this item to you? Because we have heard concerns tonight from our commissioners and from people in our community about when they're on the pathways and bikeways, as users in the pathways and bikeways, they don't feel safe. They feel like people are riding past them too fast. They feel like they're unsafe speeds, people aren't following the rules of the road, they're just uncomfortable, and we do not want to dissuade people from using our pathways, so we want to give our police department tools and create tools on our team side too, or transportation team side, for education and training, so we can help improve safety for everyone. Alright. Our goal is not to shift people into single occupancy vehicles. Our climate action plan says that we want people to make trips on electric mobility devices. So when I'm talking to you about actions today, they are not to dissuade people from using these devices. They are actually to encourage more people to use them by making others that are on the pathways and bikeways feel safer. And we really want to look at providing education and training for people with devices. Brooke brought up a really good point when we were in our coordination meeting, is that when you get your driver's license, you have to take classes, you have to take training. We're going through that right now in my own house. And so, and all the practice. When you get a e-scooter or e-device, we just hand it to you and say, here you go, and we think that you're going to know how to stop it in, if you have to make a tight turn or a quick turn or any sort of quick stop. So it's really important that we have a training element along with it. So that's one of our goals. Alright, so what is out there? Because that has been coming up tonight too. And this is actually going to be an item or a graphic that's going to be in our new bicycle map. So it has human-powered devices. You do not know minimum age, no driver's license, helmets required for 17 and under, and they're allowed on bike lanes and pathways. Class 1, anyone can pretty much ride one. Class 1 and 2, sorry. Class 1 is pedal assist, which means that if you pedal harder, you go faster. Class 2 has a throttle, so you use your shifter and you're able to throttle, and those devices go up to 20 miles an hour. Class 3 is pedal assist, but it goes up to 28 miles an hour. It's a more robust e-bike. Now there's e-skateboards. E-skateboards, you have to be a minimum of 16 years old, and all riders, regardless of age, are required to wear helmets. Oh, same with the Class 3. Same, 16 and 16 in helmets. E-scooters. Now this is where we see a lot of misunderstanding about what the law is regarding. E-scooters, minimum age of 16, plus you have to have a driver's license or an instructor permit required. And you have to have a helmet under 17 and you are allowed on the pathways. Electric wheelchairs are allowed everywhere, no requirements. Now, motorcycles, mopeds, 16, mopeds do not have pedals. That's the distinction between a bicycle and a moped, is that there's no pedals. Now, if you tear the pedals off of your e-bike, does it become a moped? We don't know yet. We're working with our police department to see if you tear the pedals off, if the traffic court is going to enforce it and say now it is a moped. And then finally, it's electric scooter, or electric cart, sorry, minimum age of 13 and no other requirements. So that is what our existing landscape is in the state of California for devices. Alright, so proposed actions. So our Davis Police are going to be attending, and they already have attended a few of our back to school events, talking with parents about age restrictions of types of devices. What we're seeing now in the market is that e-scooters are being marketed to children as young as 3 years old. And they have speed limits of like 8 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, and that is what the commercials and the media, when you Google e-scooter for youth, you'll be surprised of what comes up. And so as a parent, when you see that something is marketed towards you, you think that, oh, well, that must be safe for my kid. And actually, the law states that it's only for people that are 16 plus and have a driver's permit or a driver's license. So we're having conversations with parents at the back to school nights talking about what devices are appropriate and what are allowed. We're also interested in looking at developing a bicycle diversion program for bicycle, e-scooter, and e-bike for riders who do get fines. So instead of making it a financial penalty, now it's an opportunity for us to have that educational conversation about how to ride appropriately and how to handle your device. We want to develop more webpage material about the rules of the road, including safety videos. We want to train folks like Corey here and our Davis police staff to be able to go out in our community and teach e-device handling classes. There's an opportunity to bring someone in from Southern California to teach the teachers essentially, and then have Corey and maybe invite Davis go out and be able to teach e-device handling classes. And then we want to provide training for our Davis PD. There's about 64 officers, making sure that they all understand the laws about e-scooters and e-bikes. Some of the laws are buried within the California Vehicle Code, and they might not be as familiar with them because they don't enforce them regularly. And so providing like a cheat sheet and training to make sure that they're all aware of what exists. All right. So another proposal is that we want to restrict e-scooter use on junior high and elementary school campuses. This is not focused on staff and faculty. This is focused on the students themselves, having those conversations with the parents saying this device is not permitted because of the California law, and then allowing the parent to have that understanding. Another thing that we want to do is create marketing materials for parents that talk about e-scooters and what the laws are regarding e-scooters. Okay, changes to the municipal code. So currently the municipal code solely focuses on bicycles. It's the title of the chapter, it's what it focuses on. We want to add e-scooters and other mobility devices, which now allows for officers to have enforcement of e-scooters and other mobility devices, not just bicycles. We also, and that ties to that unsafe speed. So we have an opportunity to, if you do ride an unsafe speed and you are an e-device, then a police officer could give you a fine for that. Another thing we want to do is restrict the number of passengers on single rider devices. So we see a lot of 2 people on the spin devices, you shaking hands. So we wanna have a new, fine that allows us to restrict that or fine for that. And then another thing that we're working on is looking at improper behavior, and this one focuses on our juveniles, is that allowing police officers to have the tools to reach out to their parents about a violation, and then making that parent or guardian also responsible for that fine. So those two go hand in hand, but really having those internal family conversations to help change that behavior at the home versus it being something that the parent doesn't even know about. All right, and those are our proposed changes. I know today we talked a little bit about fines, and we did not include that in the presentation, but Ryan, do you want to say anything about fines before we move on?
Yeah, I'll talk about fines, and then I'll go to slide 5 briefly.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that we establish a new fine schedule as a municipal infraction as part of this. Mainly so it's lower than whatever the fine schedule would be in the California Vehicle Code. Right now, bikes are cars, and if the car runs a stop sign, it's like a $250 fine for the first offense, and the bike would be subject to that. I'd be looking for something less than that. The city does have a resolution in place that sets our cars cop bail schedule or fine for bicycle infractions at $50. I've asked the police department for some information on what it costs to write a ticket and administer that fine. I have the suspicion that at $50 an infraction, we're losing money every time we write a ticket. And while I don't ever expect a fine to actually be a revenue source for us, I think we'll need to be in a position where it's at least revenue neutral. I do want to highlight something that might be part of the discussion for Class 3 e-bike. Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes, the state is clear that we do not have the authority to restrict them on the trails. We can restrict Class 3 e-bikes. And that is something that the commission would like to explore further. That is something that we could look at. And that's part of the reason I keep on kind of focusing on the 20-mile-an-hour maximum speed for the Class 2. One, it's the bike, it's the device that we see the most of. I don't think I've seen more than 2 or 3 Class 3 bikes in Davis on the roads, let alone the trails. But 2, if the Class 3s become a problem, we still have a means to address them. We can restrict them to the roads and get them off the trails if we need to.
Okay. With that, then, if that's the end of the presentation, we'll move on to clarifying questions. Are there clarifying questions?
Well, I was on the city council when we changed the citation fine. And the idea was before the fine was so large that the police officers, being human, would sort of take pity on the person who did the violation and not want to hit them with a $200 fine. And the idea was they could give them a $50 fine because we wanted to have citations issued because we felt that violations were important and not like, oh, don't worry about it, promise you won't do it next time, but actually write the ticket. But when it was $200, it was just too harsh for a UC Davis student. So that was the background. So that's why it was lower, and we kind of knew that it wasn't covering the cost to actually go through the mechanics of writing a ticket. But that's the backstory.
I have a clarifying question. The clarifying question is, what are the collision data involving e-bikes and e-scooters?
It's a great question. I do not have that off the top of my head, and our police, when they go to a collision, on their form, there's nothing right now for e-bike and e-scooter, correct, Ryan?
I think it was just recently added.
Oh, just recently.
Every agency uses the CHP form, CHP 555, to take a collision report. And up until recently, or it's going to soon be added to identify whether it's a bicycle or an e-bike. So right now we don't have that data. It's not being collected.
So they will be lumped in with bikes.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And we'll probably get back to that in the discussion because we have collision data on bikes and we know how it stacks up with collision data of collisions with vehicles. So.
Other clarifying questions?
The reasonable and prudent standard, is that gonna be applied as well to the e-business?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's really the intent, is I'm looking for a toolbox, so when an officer is dealing with something that's unsafe, they have resources to allow them to issue a fine or a citation, and this would be an municipal infraction that they could sign.
Another clarifying question, do we have data on how many of those $50 like fines have been issued? And the answer boy is not off the top of our head, but I think it would be useful to have that information.
Yeah, I reached out to PD to get that information, I have not heard back yet.
Sure, and I spoke to John on Saturday, I think he didn't know. It takes some time to pull the information, I think it will be helpful to have that. More to the question of enforcement capacity, I suspect that the volume of these tickets having been cited has been on the low side, simply because we're dealing with 4 and there's 5 people on the traffic beat. And all the limitations on enforcement that comes with that, and I think that's actually very central to this whole discussion. So that, actually, I think it would be helpful for us to have that.
Yep, as soon as I know, I'll
Yeah,
let you
sure.
know.
Hey, Mark, I really appreciate all your comments, but I can barely hear you. Can you speak up a little?
Oh,
from
I'm
now?
sorry, I tried to, okay, I'll try to, yes.
Thank you.
Did you get that, or?
I did, mostly, yeah.
Okay.
It might be my hearing, I'm
The
sorry.
air conditioning is very loud.
It's
Yeah.
very loud.
And I try not to yell, but I will yell.
Okay, any other clarifying questions from anyone? If we're done with clarifying questions, it's now public comment. Like to make public comment?
No way.
Hi again. I wanted to say on the last one, I forgot to say that we do really appreciate the no gas powered vehicles. That was a major concern. We would like to point out, as I think Todd did in his email, Todd Edelman sent an email to everybody, that if people felt safer riding their bikes on the streets, they would not ride so fast on paths. So if we could continue to improve infrastructure, maybe work a little harder on that, that would be a really good way to make our paths safer. And as a parent who raised a scofflaw, apparently, because I may be the only person who's actually dealt with a fine, the courts, you have to go to court. So there's no need to say that the parents need to be notified or are not going to be responsible for the fine, because you do get notified by the court. So that's an automatic step. I don't know that we need it in the ordinance, but yeah, we are responsible for the young people we live with. And then the outreach, we think outreach to bike shops who may be selling these scooters to people who shouldn't be using them, and they could also inform parents when they come in that, hey, are they 16, blah, blah, blah. And then the warning step, it would be nice to have a commitment to a warning step before it goes to citation. We want to see that as well.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay, so we'll move on from public comment to commissioner discussion on the side.
I'll
It's
start.
been a problem all day.
Yeah, it's been wild.
It is off, guys. This is awful.
I'll start, and I have, maybe I'll try and frame my comments and something I shared with Ryan and Jennifer. There is an issue that I see in this discussion where there's a lot of blame cast at, and some of it rightfully so, at some of these faster two-wheel mobility devices. And in that discussion, it is very easy to get general animosity against e-bikes. And I think that is extremely dangerous, and I would hope that we can tread carefully and be precise in addressing the real issues that I see every single day, but maybe treat it with a light hand, like maybe in a warning first, which I actually have experienced works quite well, without actually, while we educate everybody, including our council members and our citizens, that if we want to think about climate impacts, safe street impacts, e-assist bikes, class 1 e-bikes in particular, e-scooters capped at 50 miles an hour, which many of them are the climate solution in transportation that scales, and it scales today. It is affordable. Every mile driven by one of these things is a mile not driven in a car, and that's just a net benefit for safety, for micro pollution, there is very little downsides to a class 1 e-bike or an e-scooter driven well, and that also means really doubling down on creating spaces for this. And I have problems with the way that we have approached this ordinance, and I hope this will not be a long discussion. I'll lead and say that maybe we should take some time to make sure we get this right, because there are real issues, and I see them every day, and I address them every day, and it works. There are people who are going too fast and it's unsafe, and we need to deal with that. But I worry that I see us follow what other communities and municipalities do and paint with a broad brush and do what Jennifer says we don't want to do, vilify and end up not promoting the use or continuing to treat the use of e-assist devices as a necessary evil that we kind of have to tolerate, as opposed to the climate and mobility revolution that actually is the only portion of it that scales. I say this coming back, having spent another 5 weeks in Europe, 3 weeks of that in my home country, where it's amazing, since the last 2 years I've been gone, like every bike is a class 1 e-assist bike, and they just have a little half-a-kilowatt-hour battery tucked underneath their little panniers. Everybody rides them, and they're just an e-assist, and there's so much enabling for anybody who might not be in their 30s or their early 40s and fit. Anything with like a slight on-ramp, anything that has, like, you know what, we have intersections here that start as an up-ramp. Like, any of those situations, they become so much more enabling. And I see what local transportation, I mean, people don't even think twice about taking that thing for everything. So I really worry about hitting it right. And I worry that as we've written this down, we're coming in single-handed on young people on e-bikes. And there are issues with young people on e-bikes, don't get me wrong. I wish we would have seen this fervor from the community on drivers around school. Because the statistics, and this is why I was asking for the question, and I think why we should wait till we have the numbers and the data and come back with the data to both get a policy and an ordinance that's right, but also use it to say, look, statistically speaking, around school sites, I think, what was it, 85 kids, according to the Berkeley Tim's data set, were injured by collisions, and they all, except for 2, involved motor vehicles. And there were 2 bike-on-bike crashes. We don't know if those were e-bikes or non-e-bikes. Statistically speaking, that's what the risk is. It doesn't mean that there isn't risk on e-bikes and speed differentials. On the speed differential, there was a study that I found, at least a study that cited a survey in Melbourne that looked at near misses and hits between cyclists and pedestrians. And they existed, they were like 100 and something of them in a 10-year window. It was only a fraction of the number of collisions in the same time of emergency department visits between pedestrians and cars. And the thing that mitigated that was separating the flows of light mobility. And we need to, as we're doing this, we need to take it as an opportunity to plant that seed with our council members, that if we really want to be transformative in our climate goals and our transportation, vision of our transportation, we're going to have to plan for that. We haven't so far. One example is the Russell bike lane. We took the old one out. We should have kept it in because it would have been the separated slower speed pedestrian versus higher speed, right? I worry that if we come in narrowly here and looking at young kids on fast bikes, which is a problem, without embedding it in that we need to do this for the climate reasons, and that we need to embrace the class 1s and the class 2, we are shooting from the hip, we're going to get it wrong. So, I see how it can be done right, I've experienced how it can be done right, and I see us in many places in the US, and even now back in the Netherlands, kind of overreact and put a lot of emphasis on the real risks, but not the biggest risks that I know my kids face. And this comes back to enforcement. We're not going to be hiring more cops. It is actually a cost prohibitive way to enforce. So we're going to have to, like, whatever fine schedule we arrive at and whatever, like, what tools we're going to give our police department officers to enforce, it's still going to be the same 4 people who are already unable to enforce vehicle infractions. And you know, unfortunately, it's going to have to be the community kind of enforcement more so than the heavy-hand law enforcement, which is a cost-ineffective way and a non, like, it's just not going to happen. So, with that in mind, I would want us to maybe take some time, take a meeting to think about this, and get some of this data, and then talk to the police department. It's like, hey, what would this actually look like? And come up with an ordinance that actually meets the moment, and also is not going to hamstring us for our traffic safety climate goals, because I really believe that's what we do here, because I see that happening in other places. I'll stop here, I have more comments later, but I don't want to dominate the discussion, I'm sorry.
So I think we can get somewhere today, Mark, that would fall within your comfort zone. What I have a concern about is if we wait for the collision data, we'll be waiting 2 years. And these are a small subset of the devices, and so there's sort of this sort of rare event type of thing. I appreciated the chart which showed the number of e-devices, and you know, I really appreciate the education component, because these are relatively new and for both the parents and the young people. And so as these kids go through the school system, they will know kind of the right and wrong way to use these devices. I think there's some more immediate needs. If you look, 90% of like the scooters are with the UC Davis folks, not with the DJUSD folks. And what I would suggest is a policy not about the device, but it's about the behavior. And so what I would suggest is that on our sidewalks, there's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. This may sound familiar, but that's for non-e-bikes, just regular bikes. It's for e-bikes, it's for scooters, it's for what have you. Vehicles on sidewalks, 5 miles an hour. On shared use paths, whether it's a regular, just human-only powered vehicle, whether it's type 1, type 2, or type 3, I wouldn't suggest type 3 are excluded from the bike path or shared use path, because if somebody is going 10 miles an hour, the fact that their vehicle can go 30 miles an hour, but they're going 10, hey, that's great, they're going safe. So let's not outlaw the device, let's not villainize, probably not the correct use of the word, but you know, these category of vehicles. Let's talk about behavior. And so, yes, this person who's now able to commute from South Davis to get to Davis High because they have an e-bike of some sort, and they got, you know, why would you get a class 2 when for the same price you can get a class 3, and you know, that sort of thing, and they're on the bike lane where there are no speed limits that we're talking about, where they can comfortably go with the flow of traffic, which is ultimately safer. Having that additional power can be of benefit. So I would just say, let's talk about behavior, not the device. And it's 5 miles an hour on the sidewalk, 15 on a shared use path, and again, the provision no faster than safe to do so is kind of the subheading. In the staff report, it talked about Marin and having a 16-year-old. In the staff report, that same link took you to a place, San Diego, where they had 12. I would be open to the idea of maybe 12 would be the limit. In Davis, kids start biking to school in 3rd grade on their own. I mean, you know, I took my son, he was 1st grade, he had his own little bike, and we kind of, by 12, he was more than capable of having an e-assist. And so I think Davis is a little different than maybe some communities, so I think 16 is too old. But if we did want to do some age restriction, I'd be more comfortable with 12. But to me, that's much more secondary to the sidewalks 5, shared use path 15 for all users. You could be rollerblading, going by, like, I don't want you going 20 miles an hour blowing by people on the shared use path. So that would be the suggestion in Mark, then that leaves room to fine tune based upon data, whether there's some subset of vehicle type or not that perhaps is more collision heavy, where we have to, you know, be a little more precise around that. But it's the user, not the vehicle.
Let me clarify real quick. I wasn't suggesting to wait until we get 2 years of data. Actually, there's national data. I have national data that tell exactly what the collision frequencies are of e-bikes, and the number of collisions between e-bikes and pedestrians is, like, I think there's been 8 in the US in the last 6 years that were fatal. The large majority of e-bike collisions are e-bike collisions with motor vehicles, where in a large proportion of the instances it's been the driver at fault. Actually, not that different from collision statistics of regular bikes. I was suggesting that we make sure we take 1 or 2 commissions and get this right this fall, but make sure we get it right rather than get it right tonight if you feel that we can't get there. Because I think what we're dealing with here is both dealing with an important set of problems, but also something that is so central to how we plan for our transportation and our climate that I feel strongly we want to make sure we get that right. And we don't have all the data at hand here.
So
to get that. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just a
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding, but when I'm looking at what you're proposing for the changes to municipal code, doesn't go down to the level of detail that we're talking about right now here in terms of speed limits and crash data and things like that. I think that the changes, as I don't know, maybe you can throw up on there what the changes were. I mean, I think the changes right now are fairly generic, which is we're defining what e-scooters and mobility devices are, restricting number of passengers, creating a municipal code infraction for finding of e-devices, but it doesn't go into the detail what those infractions would be. I mean, I think the changes at this point are reasonable. What I think we're talking about is getting a chance to come back to this issue and define more of the specifics of what we're talking about. What are the ages that we are comfortable with? What are the speeds we're comfortable with? What are the, you know, how do we encourage more mobility while at the same time ensuring safety? I mean, so am I misunderstanding what is actually included in this? Is there more to this than what?
So I got a couple things. No, you're not. You're understanding this. We're not talking about state limits. We're not talking about age restrictions. We do not have the ability to restrict ages right now. That's special only to Marin, San Diego, and one other location I can't remember right now. And we're not talking about state limits. I struggle trying to figure out how to establish a state limit on a trail. It's not a highway. Everything I have tells me how to establish a state limit on a highway. And nobody in this room will like the answer if I use that method. It will be too high. There might be, Marin did it recently. If we really want to look at establishing a state limit, we can go back to that. It's a general policing power. The American River Trail, especially through Folsom and part of Sacramento County, have speed limit signs up.
Yep.
I cannot find anything in any of their municipal codes that established that as a state limit.
Because it's in the county. The American River Parkway, that's county, that's not city.
I looked in the county too,
Okay.
Sac County. So I'm not sure how they,
No.
yeah,
I mean, some of it's state, but most of it's county.
I'm not sure how they got there. It's been a struggle of mine because, yeah, I'd go out there with a radar device or a LiDAR device, I'd measure the speeds of 100 vehicles. Well, probably 50, I don't think I'm gonna get 100 in a reasonable amount of time on the trail. And do the 85th percentile thing.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah,
You don't have to do that. That's required by statute for
yeah,
highway, for roads. It's not required for bike. You could set it at 2 miles an hour if you wanted to. You don't have to prove to anybody why you set it at 2. Like, that's at the city council's
discretion.
Yeah, discretion. Sorry.
But in general policing power is probably where we'd end up with that, and it would become a challenge to enforce. for the PD side. I do have a couple thoughts. The first one is we do have an active transportation plan that we will be kicking off shortly. And the intent of that plan, and first of all, thank you, Jennifer, for securing the funding for this plan. The purpose of this plan is really to start looking at some of these larger questions about facility design. How do we accommodate these e-devices, especially with some of our older infrastructure elements that need to be updated? And we'll probably get a lot into the education and the policy and some of that. So I think there's a good chunk of this discussion that's really going to be part of that when we have more data and we've got a team on board to help us work through that. The immediate plan really was to come up with a series of what I felt were very common sense ordinance approaches to give us some ability to react to some of these issues that we keep hearing from the community.
Yeah, my issue with that, and I like, we go on vibes here, and some of them are grounded, and we have data on the car side, and we have found ourselves unable to act on that. And it's the disconnect between how easily middle-aged people in rooms like this, like myself, are able to point at cyclists where there are real problems, but at the same time are never ever going to look inward and look at the large group of drivers of which we are mostly part of, and also do the same education to drivers. I would love it if we sent our police department folks in, and on the same time that they're teaching the 16-year-olds and 12-year-olds how to do an e-bike, we also teach the moms and the dads to make sure that they can stop parallel park, because I can guarantee you they can't. And if you look at the number of infractions you see outside their schools, like, and there we do nothing. And it's the imbalance, it is the selectivity here that is, I think, setting a tone that I think sets us up for not even being able to meet our transportation goals going forward. If we can find a way to do this ordinance to not selectively focus on the 16-year-olds, but also focus on drivers around schools in general, or users of the roads in general, that would be much more equitable. And I know from experience that we have not been able to do that. We have skirted away from that responsibility. I have reported numerous people. It's interesting. There was one instance where I saw 2 kids on a bike going too fast. I emailed both principals. And the next time I saw them, issue was solved, problem solved. They were spoken to. I said, please don't discourage them from doing it. They have no problem doing that. Nobody's ever gone after a parent who brings up a kid at school and says, hey, you were reported. So there is this imbalance in this whole approach where we are willing and able to try and regulate and educate certain people, but not others. And there, I think, is my rub. I think I think there's an inherent unfairness and short-sightedness in that I think locks us into more of the same of the status quo. There is my concern. Go ahead.
Chair, I'd just like to point out that the recommendation on this item is for us to hear this presentation,
sure.
Provide feedback on the municipal code for bicycles. I think it is totally reasonable for us to have an item maybe someday at some other meeting where we talk about how people driving around schools there should be more enforcement, they should be better educated, all those other things, but that's not really what this item's on. And I think that, like, we'll be here all night if we talk about all the things that everybody does wrong, and instead of, I think some feedback I hear from Mark is, hey, we should be really careful about how we go forward with this. We should tell the city council, be careful about how you do this, because we don't want to in any way discourage people from making these better choices. But then, I think I like the idea of having more conversation about driver education and those other things at another time. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I think we need to talk about these changes and the need to define what these devices are, because otherwise there's nothing that can, we don't get the data, we don't get anything. To jump ahead a little bit, it seems like some of this discussion is something that would be a good subcommittee, because I agree, I'm very frustrated sometimes that, something comes to us, we have one chance to act on it, and we don't have really a chance to say, can we get more information? Can we get, something else? Can we, come back and talk about this after consideration? So, I think the basics of this are probably something that needs to be done at this point. I think some of the details of this would be really appropriate for a subcommittee to look into and talk about how we look at maybe a broader education program. I don't think that it's a bad thing to focus, to take the opportunity to educate, users at a younger age. And maybe by being better e-bike users and e-scooter users are going to be better, more careful drivers later on. But I think that a lot of this is going very far afield from what we're talking about here. And I understand your concern, and I don't disagree with it, but I just think we're opening up to looking at all the things that are wrong with people that drive, and there's plenty. So, I think what we need to consider, is this a reasonable change to the municipal code that can be done now, and then we as a committee can take the time to, either through subcommittee or future agenda items to then, maybe refine this and add to it and define some of the stuff a little bit more about how we feel this all integrates. Anyway, James, I'm sorry, did you?
So it was just a question about restricting the number of passengers on devices designed for single riders. Is there a way to make sure that that doesn't conflict with people who, use some kind of accessory to a mobility device to allow them to transport like small children, like those wagons or whatever that get attached?
Yeah, that's different, right? There's a device that's attached, it's designed to carry a child or whatever, and it's a safe device. This is more about two people riding on one seat of a bicycle or two people riding on one board of a scooter.
Yeah.
And a police officer can, my impression is that a police officer can easily discretion, oh, well, that's a child in a contained space on a bicycle where its feet are pegged down and it's locked in, which is what the law states, versus two people standing on a scooter.
Again, the question I have there is, do we have data that actually in those devices with two people on it are going to go much slower? Is it actually a safety concern?
Well, it is a safety concern. We recently received information from UC Davis. They had two people on one scooter and maybe one or two people on the other scooter, head-on collision, almost fatal for two of them. They were in comas for
So this is the data that I was asking for, yes.
and so,
Well, it's anecdotal.
but it's
not really
completely anecdotal. I
Right.
don't have the report in front of me, nor did we ever receive the report. I've only heard it from UC Davis Police. And so that we are seeing more collisions with people getting into devices. Again, it's completely anecdotal. I don't have any data to share with you
I
about
mean,
it.
could that be the outcome of that sort of collision? These were not like 50-mile-an-hour restricted.
No, they were
Right.
going like 20.
So there were other things already wrong beyond the double occupancy. This is what I'm saying. There were likely other things wrong with that scenario with the double occupancy that we're not focusing on. So again, we don't have the data to come down to heavy-handed. I would actually I don't see that as the issue. There is an opportunity here to be proactive here. We are looking at education. I tell parents what these scooters are and what they can do. We can also advise the council, hey, if you want electric scooters or electric bikes that are inherently less prone to user misuse, then you don't restrict the ones you don't want, but you promote the ones you do want. So we can advise the city as a climate solution, as an education tool, that we give them out as far as we can, like promote their use as much as possible of the class 1s, which are just pedal assist only and are governed by speed from an early age onwards, 12 years or earlier, as opposed to trying to say, wag the finger and say, we don't wanna have the class threes, and by the way, I'd be fine to restrict the class threes off the bike paths. But rather than only saying we wanna restrict, why don't we encourage and facilitate and make money available on whatever income-based thing, or make resources available to actively promote the use of these devices, rather than only coming down and says, well, the city says you can't do this. Like, by the time you promote the use of a class 1 for an elementary school kid, or sorry, a junior high kid, you know, they're not gonna buy a class 3, and any user on a class 1 on a shared use bike path is probably gonna be inherently less dangerous because those devices can't go as fast. Like, I would like us to see and include that into a device like this as an opportunity that we have, rather than being just restricted.
It's a good point. So we already have programs like that in place. They're not necessarily for under folks that are 18 and under,
Right.
but UC Davis and the city are members of YOLO Commute, and YOLO Commute has deep discounts on purchasing e-bikes through a company called VeloTrek from the UC Davis Bike Barn, and anyone who's affiliated with YOLO Commute can go to the bike barn and purchase a deep discounted e-bike as their mode of travel.
So as we're educating, as we're sending police officers out to the community to say, hey, this is the danger of the class 3, I would want to say, hey, here's an opportunity, and let's just allow the 12-year-olds or the 16-year-olds, because right now they can't.
So I have a question. You're talking about data, but so you have data showing that class 3 is inherently more dangerous for
The speed,
licensed users?
masked by same device, like,
So theoretical. So, but you're asking for actual data as opposed to a mathematical formula. So I'm not trying to be hostile,
no, it's fine.
but often we don't have the data that we're looking for. We have to use our best judgment. And I'll just point out that we were comfortable we like to talk, so 30 minutes ago, that if somebody has a mobility issue, somehow we were comfortable with the notion that going 10 miles an hour on a sidewalk would be less safe for the users than 5 miles an hour, and we're comfortable landing on 5.
Sure.
And on the shared use path, we felt that 15 was more appropriate than 20. And yet,
for those larger devices, yes, because they're heavier.
they're not always larger.
Sure.
They can be actually the same devices is what we're talking about. And yet, when I say like, let's limit the speed of users regardless of what vehicle they're on, that we now have to wait for specific data. So I'm not, again, targeting the e-assist ones. And I think, Ryan, perhaps this is true, but I'd be very surprised if it is true, that the notion that if you have a shared use path or some path which is not, a public right-of-way for motor vehicles, in the sense of cars, that the city can't regulate the speed. Because
We can regulate the speed.
so if we can regulate the
It's
speed,
the enforcement.
I'm not worried about the enforcement, because we can go out here right now, and for every person who has a light, I'll give you $1. For every person who doesn't have a light on the bike, you give me $1. And
We can, through the city's general policing power and the city council, could establish a 15-mile-an-hour green belt speed limit. They could establish a 5-mile-an-hour sidewalk speed limit on some or all the sidewalks. They could say downtown Davis only 5 miles an hour, citywide 5 miles an hour, whatever they chose to do. That is something that could happen.
yeah, and so I get the enforcement thing, but on the one hand, we're telling the people with mobility issues, sorry, 5 miles an hour, but we can't do the same thing for other users, and this is not in stone. As we get more data, perhaps 5 is the wrong number. Perhaps it should be by device, and perhaps shared use paths, same thing, and perhaps there are different areas. Like for instance, right now, downtown, you're not supposed to ride your bike on the sidewalk,
Sure.
but in other areas you can. I understand wanting to get it right, but we're gonna be, stuff comes up, we may not get there. I feel like this is the perfect time to have this companion to what we just did, the other one, go before the city council, and it's just a simple parallel thing. Hey, you got a mobility issue, 5 and 15. You don't have a mobility issue, 5 and 15. And we can fine tune it and get, but I appreciate you, yes, we do fall into the habit sometimes of, being hostile to the e-devices.
Yeah.
When really it's not the device, it's proper use of the device.
Let me clarify where my remark came from for the Class 3 devices. When I was a kid, there was a category of motorized two-wheel scooters.
Yep.
That gave lots and lots of trouble.
Yeah.
Because they were sharing space with regular cyclists back in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And the way they solved that is they moved what was the faster, heavier device to the vehicle lane, where they were now sharing space with objects that were larger, and it solved a lot of those issues. And I think that specific experience with a speed differential and mass differential was solved effectively. And that's, I think, what I see with both the Class 3 bikes. And if I see anybody go too fast on shared bikes, it's these Class 3 e-bikes. And so by regulating those and potentially removing those, I also hope and think that we would remove some of the anecdotal concerns that come to City Council on, oh my God, I had this near miss, which I think if we remove those, we're going to remove some of the animosity against the large class in general.
I apologize, Brooke, I can't help but,
Okay,
I think I have a 2-minute thought experiment. So imagine you are a commuter in Davis to the Capitol.
Yeah.
And the e-bike is a perfect fit for you.
Right.
You're on the causeway. Pardon the language, like, dear God, please let me get this portion over with as soon as possible.
Yeah, I've done that thing.
When I come back to Davis, part of the journey is through the shared use path to get to my home.
Yeah.
If I'm a law-abiding person, and it's like, oh, I can't use that, even though as a mature adult, I'm going to go the safe speed, but just the device itself is banned. I think that creates a problem, and I think getting to what you're trying to do, which is this replaces a single vehicle, car trip. And I think having that option, because COVID changed a lot of things, but there were a fair number of people going back and forth, and with the new battery technology and all these things, it becomes a real possibility. And if the last leg, which would normally be a very pleasant trip through the Greenbelt, but I'm not disagreeing we could revisit it, but I'm just saying for this first pass, just the notion of the first item and this item being somewhat parallel, and the city council and Ryan, will have a staff report, and Jennifer will as well. Perhaps they disagree with the notion, but I think, 5 and 15, or we can put it in metric to please some of our, but I think that addresses a big chunk of items, concerns that the public is having about the mismatch of speeds. And again, I mentioned the rollerbladers just blazing on through.
So Ryan, I mean, maybe this is wrong, I just did a quick search, it's like, what do we have current speed limits? And it says currently, we have a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit on parks and greenways, and a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit is explicitly posted. So do we already have?
We have a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit for maintenance trucks that are on the parks and greenways.
Yep.
Okay, but not for every device does not have, I mean, bicycles don't have a maximum speed?
No.
We do not have any speed limit established on our trails for bicycles, e-bikes, trikes, any of those devices.
But they're going at 20 miles an hour already as the only, vehicle on our roads, along with their scooters.
So if I understand, I think what we're getting at is we're suggesting that we make a recommendation to the city, to staff, when they come to city council next month, to also include speed limits, the 5 and 15.
That would be my.
But otherwise, we are all okay with the other list of actions. Oh, I wanted to include Mark's idea of, like, not only when we do our educational of like what can kids not do, but include, I mean, I don't see why it can't be an and, also include, and here are some things they can ride that are, that are legal and safe, or safe for 10-year-olds or whatever. But other than that, are we pretty good? I mean, do you feel like we beat this to death enough?
I do feel we should be at a point here where we can make a motion regarding the changes that are being proposed in the staff report.
Was that a motion?
I was trying to make a motion, and I did not say I would like to move that we, I mean, because there isn't really like a thing for us to approve, we're just including some recommendation, or we are making recommendations.
Yes.
I move that we recommend that to the staff that they consider including speed limits of 15 and 5 as discussed by Brett, and examples of e-vehicles that are appropriate for kids when educating the kids at schools on the things that are not appropriate.
Is there a second to that?
Yeah, I'll second that, maybe with just the slighted, just more specifically saying the proposal was to expand the municipal code to include the various categories of e-vehicles. Right now, the municipal code just talks about bicycles. It's
Yes.
so what Eric, basically exactly what Eric says, but specifically calling out that this is an important piece to, in that section, list the responsibilities of e-vehicles that fall under the bicycle subsection.
Eric, will you accept that?
Yes, absolutely. I actually believe that's in there already. Currently, the code only references bicycles. Adding e-scooters and other mobility devices to the code is one of the things.
It will be in there. Part of what I'm working on is leaving it generic enough that when the new e-device is invented,
Yeah,
It's
e-roller,
covered.
you mentioned that.
Yeah, e-rollerblades, I think that's what we're going to next. Jet powered.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion?
You okay with that, Mark? Like
No, I'm not. I think moving away from the already governed speed of 20 miles an hour as a max, I think it's just going to both be unenforceable and it's also going to be a mistake. I would want us to stay, I would want us to basically follow California.
There is no speed limit.
These devices are governed, they're capped at 20 miles an hour.
Bicycles can go 30 miles an hour quite easily. You can.
The E is just cuts out at 20 miles an hour, so that de facto is a speed limit.
I said a bicycle.
The regular
Human powered bicycle, right? And so we are, it's for all users.
Yeah. I think the 20 mile an hour de facto limit that we have is.
Unless you're disabled, then you can only go 15.
If you're going in a device that is a lot heavier and a lot lighter.
Well, in the previous topic, that was actually talking about the limit of the weight of those devices for people with disabilities. But it is the case that many people with disabilities might ride a device that is the same weight or even less than one of these bicycles.
Well, it doesn't have to be in consensus, Mark. I mean, I made a motion. Has anyone seconded it? I mean, we can, we can vote on it, and then if it doesn't pass, we can have a new motion, I guess.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this motion? Okay. If there is no more discussion on the motion, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
So, motion carries with one nay. Again, I think, like I said, this is a perfect topic for us to consider in our next item. But before, as a subcommittee, but I will say we have reached the witching hour of 8 o'clock. And for us to continue with our agenda, which would now include establishing subcommittees and the quorum check for November 10 and review of our task calendar, we do need for the commission to vote to continue to take up those items because we are after 8 o'clock. Is there a motion to continue?
I motion to continue.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we will continue with the agenda.
Okay, hand it over to Ryan.
Okay, so first of all, I forgot to introduce myself to our two new members. I apologize. I'm Ryan Chapman. I'm the Director of Public Works, Engineering and Transportation. I'm also a traffic engineer and obviously very excited about many of the subjects. And right now I've got subcommittees. Prior to Transportation Commission, we had the BTSSC, and they had a variety of different subcommittees, so I'm going to go through a list of some of those, and as well as a couple of ideas that come out of our transportation work plan, moving transportation forward. Just wanted to say a couple things. First thing is each subcommittee has to have at least 2 members and no more than 3. We can't have a quorum on the committee, and we can't have committees of 1. And subcommittees need to have very limited scopes with clearly defined objectives. We can't have a standing subcommittee without causing complications with the Brown Act. And essentially creating another Brown Act committee that needs to be agendized and noticed and all that good stuff. And then finally, I'm not looking or asking that you fill every single one of these ideas. Subcommittees are really the place where you guys are able to kind of do the work and follow the interests you want to with minimal staff involvement, and then bring stuff back to the commission as a whole. I've just put down some ideas that we've seen in the recent past and some thoughts that I had. So jumping into that, from the past BTSSC committees, I think the big 3 that existed at the end was a Transportation Innovation Subcommittee that was really looking at kind of evolving city processes to try to be more innovative and more streamlined, as well as looking at some emerging technologies to see if there was anything there that the city might be interested in engaging with. There was also an Events and Outreach Subcommittee that was really looking at kind of some of the requests that the city gets to man bike delays or do other bike-related activities. Loopalooza would probably be a big one for that kind of commission, where we're looking to support and staff various tables at various stations just to do check-in and wristbands and all that good stuff. And then traffic calming, which was partly speed hump requests and trying to deal with residential traffic calming issues, as well as helping review requests that I get periodically for stop signs, red curb, kind of just the day-to-day operation of the road network. I had some ideas moving forward. Big one, going back to the active transportation plan. There's going to be a lot of outreach for this. There might be some opportunities to work with a consultant in a few months when we get them on to help man tables and kind of help with that outreach. Really, the city's looking to engage with populations that normally don't engage with us when we write this type of plan. So anyone that can help open those doors into that outreach and communication would be very, very useful. There's a committee to get out. Safe routes to school, school safety, driver safety around the schools. I've got an immediate need to do some quick field treatments and consider some options. Late last week, I got a request to look at the signal timing at Arlington and Westernos next to the middle school in West Davis, and just helping to kind of identify some of the solutions there. On that one, we got a larger project where we're doing reflective black plates and fixing the signal as a whole, countdown heads, but I realized that we never turned on the leading pedestrian interval, so just somebody to help work through some of those issues. But it's also got the potential to really talk about driver outreach and deal with some of the driver safety issues we were just talking about a few minutes ago. ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems, and putting together a master plan for that. This might overlap with transportation innovation, but really sitting down, looking at what other communities have done and figure out if that's the right approach for Davis. I'm not sure that we want to staff a room where somebody's looking at cameras and all the intersections. That seems like a massive overkill, but there might be a streamlined approach that allows us to be more responsive to issues and deal with problems using some of these emerging technologies, or not so emerging technologies in that case. Speed hump policy, we're getting ready to put in 2 new speed humps, but last time we did an approval with the commission, there was a lot of questions about the policy. We probably have a need to review the policy, look at recent requests, and see if we need to change that policy and what those changes would be. That's always been kind of a petition-driven process. And there might be a need to look at even just the level of planting things and evaluating them. And then a quick build program. Jennifer probably mentioned it, but we're putting in our first quick build project along Fifth Street. I'd really like to have some input on what works for Davis, what works for the bicycling community, and we can put together as far as the process. I also need, or as a program and a toolbox of options, I also need a process to get these vetted and approved through the commission, possibly even the city council in some cases, and trying to make sure we right size that so we don't lose the quick build. Those are my thoughts, and I'm glad to answer any questions. And look forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
Thank you, Ryan, appreciate it. So are there, I guess, any clarifying questions for, or is other commission businesses as follow the same? Okay, so are there any clarifying questions for Ryan concerning the subcommittees or how they're established?
I have a quick question. I just want to better understand what you're suggesting, Ryan. You just listed off a whole bunch of examples of things, but what you're asking is if there's anyone on the commission who would be, or any one and or two, but well, two or more, 2 to 3 people who want to do some of these things, and if so, then you're asking us to volunteer to like maybe pursue these with staff?
These are exclusive. I mean, if there's anything that anyone
Or
on the
anything
commission
else.
wants to look at, I was just trying to give you some examples from the past and some things I'm trying to work on that due to budget constraints, I'm not sure how I'm gonna get there.
But what you're not saying is, I'd love to have a subcommittee for each one of these things that I've named. Like you're not, okay, I just want to make that clarifying. Just like
I expect, realistically, I would be surprised if you have more than 2 or 3 subcommittees that are created through this process. My experience is when a commission has more subcommittees than that, especially with this level of membership, nothing really gets done on those subcommittees.
And my other clarifying question is are there, I mean, if you could rank these in staff preference, I wish if we only had 1 subcommittee or 2 subcommittees, these would be the 1 or 2 that I would love if I could ask Santa for anything. What would those be?
Speed hump policy, I think it's quick. Safe routes to school and just dealing with those issues. It's a perennial concern. School year just started, we're getting a lot of calls. And being able to get some more tools and some fresh eyes on some of this would be nice.
So the speed hump one and the school safety one?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That was my question.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, so I guess we'll go to public comment. Is there any?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, so what would be the process to assign?
Somebody would make a motion to create a committee. The commission see if there's interest in doing that. And then, once it's at 2 or 3, we vote to approve it and we move on. I would be taking these to the city council as an informative item on consent, saying that the commission is requesting form committees to do these things, to get it approved. I don't expect there's going to be any pushback on that. There's a new process and that formality is part of that. So hopefully, by the next meeting or the one after, we'd be able to report that the commission's subcommittees have been approved by the council.
Any other?
I'll just say first dibs to the new people, like if you're coming in with,
Yeah, I was just gonna make sure that y'all know Bike Davis is here. We have a lot of its, knowledge about bicycling infrastructure. If you need us, call us, bikedavis.us. We're happy to answer questions, tell you what to do.
Any other clarifying questions? Is there any public comment on this issue? I guess
I think that was the public comment.
We'll take that as public comment. So with that, we'll open this for discussion. So I guess it's, is there any interest in forming subcommittees? Are there any people who are interested in forming a specific subcommittee?
I'm
We talked last year about the whole issue of safety around school sites. We talked about it extensively. It's come up today again. It's so central to our entity. It has to do with our kids, I think, and it's a real issue. We're doing better than most communities. They're saying, but we also have so much room for improvement. So I would hope that some of you would want to join me in forming some committee that really talks about the issue. So if I have to formulate a motion, I would motion that we form a traffic safety around school subcommittee to continue to focus on that rather than making a one-off discussion that we have next year.
I'd second that.
Okay, second.
So we moved and seconded. I guess the question for discussion is there anyone else interested in that committee? That's something I would be interested in.
I'd be interested.
Alright, that's 3.
But I mean, if somebody
Yeah,
else
I mean-
says, I don't wanna take up a spot.
Specifically safe routes to school.
Traffic safety around schools, which I would take to mean safe routes to school.
Yeah, I
but,
think it could, encompass safe route. It could encompass a number of different things related to school safety and access.
I would just like to suggest that it's also a really great entree into the traffic safety in general conversation, because I don't think there are any adult drivers who would argue that school safety is important, and so you can say, oh yeah, well, you know what else is? Like,
Sure.
all over. I mean, I think it's just it's a really safe place to start that conversation.
Eric, would you be interested in serving on that?
Well, I mean, I don't want to overcommit, so I wanted to see what other subcommittees are. I'm shopping around. We're just talking right now. We're not dating yet.
Okay.
Do we wanna figure out, before we kind of vote on the specific membership of one and then go sequentially? Maybe just throw out like which ones we're interested in forming, and then people can go, oh, if I had known that the next
Sure, I
item
wouldn't have
is
done-
like,
Or we can just propose 2 or 3 of them, and then after we move to establish them, then
we
if
can
it looks
staff
like
them.
there's sufficient interest, then we can staff them.
Sure, but that way people can figure out
Yeah.
what it looks to be in this.
So, and I'd suggest we do that. Let's suggest ones, if it looks like, we can vote on them, if everybody's supportive of establishing one. I will take that to mean that there's at least some people who wanna be on it, and, then we can staff them after we establish them. That's okay. So, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any more discussion on establishing a street safety, or a school safety, safe route to school subcommittee? Okay, if there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Okay, passes, so that's subcommittee number 1. Any suggestions on any additional subcommittees?
Sorry.
I'm personally very interested in emerging technologies and ITS, so hopefully there's somebody else
So,
who has some.
I think these are closely aligned, transportation innovation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, so we had a subcommittee that never met,
Oh.
and I was on that, but I would very much like to be a part of that.
Well, I think what Ryan said was there's an ITS master plan now, and there's something to implement
So
and meet about also.
I want an ITS master plan,
Oh, not happened yet.
and I would like to sit down, if this one's created, I'd like to spend a little bit of time at least at the beginning with you, kind of go through what I've seen in the past, what I think we have as options, and then use whatever the subcommittee comes up with as technologies to explore to help me build out this master plan, which I'm gonna need to get grant funding to
Exactly.
do these things.
Yeah, I think that combining the transportation innovation and ITS master plan development and implementation, it's not just talking about technologies that might never meet, but like, it's actionable, I guess, is why it might be more successful this time.
That's-
Sounds like there are at least 2 people interested in that one.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to establish such a subcommittee? Okay, Ray has been seconded. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to establish a ITS Master Plan Emerging Technologies Subcommittee. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We've now established our second subcommittee. Do we want to go any further than that, or is that a good start?
Brian mentioned, speed hump policy is on his
Ah.
wish list. Does anybody have,
I'd like-
that's a pretty practical one that, I mean, these requests come through and it.
I'd like to know what it is you're looking for in a subcommittee,
So 2 years ago, we established the current speed hump policy,
right?
really streamlined it from previous policies. I wrote it, so there's a bias. I've got two problems with it right now. The process is a little cumbersome for the public, and I'm getting some concern about that. And then we've got a point system where you got to score, I think 35 points or higher. And the roads that are currently eligible are having trouble meeting that threshold. So I think those two things need to be relooked at. I think